Hi guys, this is gsnome.com and I'm here with the review of the Allview X4 Soul Infinity N handset. As you know, Allview is a company from Romania who specializes in smartphones. They also have tablets in their portfolio. They do local integration of devices. Usually they work with Johnny. This seems to be one of their first phones, which is totally Allview branded. It's Allview X4 Soul Infinity N. It's also the first phone from this brand that has an 18:9 screen. As you can see here, pretty nifty aspect ratio. There is no more buttons at the bottom. It's got narrow bezels, and the price tag is at around $400. It's a mid-range device available in two hues, night sky or mocha gold, as well as steel gray. Well, it's actually three hues, my bad. It's a next level mid-ranger, and it's time for the review. The X4 Soul Infinity is actually a series that includes the L, S, N and Z model. We have the Infinity N, and it's a device that uses a metal frame which is quite sturdy. You can see it here. The backside may look like glass. It's actually plastic with a pretty nice premium finishing. It reminds me a bit of the HTC U11, only that one actually uses glass. At the front, obviously glass with narrow bezels, and this device opts for the unibody approach, so you'll be accessing the SIMs with a special SIM key. The grip is quite good, and the button feedback is also pretty solid on this side here. In the end, it reminds me a bit of the HTC U11, or better said the U11 Plus, because of the narrow bezels and aspect. It's an elegant phone, a compact phone considering its 5.7-inch diagonal, and it also has a solid build. And the only drawback is that the back kind of attracts grease and scratches. I dig it, but frankly speaking, I prefer metal. Now, as far as the screen is concerned, once again, 5.7-incher, 18:9 aspect, and a typical resolution of 1440 over 720 pixels. I said atypical, not typical. IPS LCD panel, 2.5D panel, which is gently curved to the sides. In-cell touch technology, full lamination, and for the sake of protection, we got Dragon Trail glass. Now, if you want to put the screen to the test, you're going to have to use a typical video sample. Now, as you can see here, we're dealing with our typical sample we always use on the devices. One big drawback is that, at least in this application in Google Photos, we have those big bands on the side. If you're going to use something like MX Play or other apps, you can get rid of those bands. Anyway, the experience involves a pretty bright and crisp image. The colors are very vivid, and you also have wide view angles and a pretty okay contrast in full sunlight. Now, we did the usual battery of tests on this screen, and let's see what came out. So pixels have one RGB stripes arrangement, and the brightness goes as high as 502 lux units, which is solid for a mid-range phone. It beats the HTC 10 and the Huawei P9, as well as the Galaxy S5, scores below the Huawei P10 and also below the Allview P8 Energy Pro. Now, if you want to perform tweaks on the screen, talking about color and so forth, you can go to the settings, and rest assured you will find quite a few settings. So mirror vision lets you use the following modes: standard, vivid and user, and with user you have a variety of extra tweaks. There is also contrast, saturation, picture brightness, sharpness, color temperature, dynamic contrast, and even a blue light defender to protect your eyes. And then we have brightness level, adaptive brightness, wallpaper, smart cover, screensaver, phone size and display size. Overall, pretty good screen for a mid-ranger. And now let's move on to other hardware. When I say other hardware, I'm talking about the CPU first. So it's an octa-core CPU clocked at 1.5 GHz. It's the MediaTek MT6750T. So it's a pretty familiar CPU. I've seen it on a lot of devices. It works in tandem with 4 GB of RAM, 32 GB of storage and a micro SD card slot. Luckily, I didn't experience any lag on this device, so no matter which apps I threw at it, no lags, and the games ran fine, including the game Riptide GP Renegade, which, as you know, is our typical benchmark game. All the phones and all the devices we test play this game, Riptide GP Renegade. Some people are playing Real Racing 3, others are playing Asphalt Extreme. We actually played Asphalt Extreme on the iPhone 10, excuse me. People are calling it iPhone X no longer. Here we go. So the Allview X4 Soul Infinity N plays this game. And luckily, unlike the video you saw before, there are no more black bands here, and it's quite an immersive experience. I would have to say there's no stutter and no lag. Graphics looks nice. and we can also tweak things all the way up to the maximum. Although it doesn't have the best CPU and GPU in the world, for this game it's enough. And to put said GPU and CPU to the test, we did a bunch of benchmarks, and let's see how those panned out. So we go to albums here, we go to screenshots, and we did the usual battery of tests. You got your quadrant and 2 and so forth. In quadrant, this is the result. So here we are able to beat the LG G4, Huawei Mate 9, but score below the LG G Flex and the Vernitor, for example. Now in Antutu, which is this one here, pretty modest score. It beats the predecessor, basically, or kind of a predecessor, the Allview X3 Soul and the X4 Soul Lite, so that's okay, but scores below the LG Q6 and Moto G5, which, let's face it, are not exactly powerhouses, so not exactly hugely impressive. When it comes to the graphics, there's Slingshot Extreme from 3D Mark. It beats the Allview X4 Soul Lite and X4 Soul Vision, which is a projector phone, which I find to be quite nifty, but scores below the Motorola Moto Z Play and Allview X4 Soul Style. So overall, it's basically on par with the Samsung Galaxy A5 2016, let's say, and maybe like the LG Q6, around that area. If you're wondering about problems with overheating, did not encounter those, so achieve a top level of 39.4 degrees Celsius after playing Riptide GP Renegade, you know, the game from before. And after running GFX Bench, we reached 34 degrees Celsius, which means there's no overheating here whatsoever. Okay, now let's talk about the battery. So this handset, this not very beefy handset for a 5.7 incher, has a lithium polymer battery with a 3000 mAh capacity. One would say that it's a small capacity for such a phone. Anyways, you should know that the charger bundled with the phone is a 5V 2A one, and on paper we're promised 300 hours of standby and 800 minutes of talk time. Now let's leave the paper behind and see how we did. So we usually run HD video sample in a loop and check out its results. So let's find out those results. So continuous HD video playback in a loop is 8 hours and 6 minutes, which is okay, not exactly record breaking, but also not very small. It beats the OnePlus 3 and Sony Xperia XA, so that's solid, but scores below the very modest LG AKA and the Galaxy A5, the original one from 2015. We also did a PC Mark test, which is a bit more relevant, and here it is. This is actually continuous usage, and it's not bad. Close to 1 full day of work, or if you're in Sweden, more than 1 full day of work. You know, they're working 6 hours or whatever. So 7 hours and 8 minutes, solid. It beats the Huawei Honor 5X, Galaxy S6 Edge, scores below the Sony Xperia XA1 and the Blueboo S1. The charging is, I would say, expected, reasonable, 2 hours and 4 minutes, superior to the LG Q6 and iPhone SE. So basically with 5 minutes of charge you're at 5%, 15 minutes gives you 21%, and 30 minutes 40%, which I would say it's reasonable. On the option side of things, there's standby intelligent power saving, battery saver, no extra tweaks except for battery optimizations. Overall, I would say a pretty reasonable battery, and especially in the continuous usage, it's doing fine for its mid-range area. If you want to talk about the acoustics, there is a single speaker here at the bottom on the right, and we're using a music player. You can use Play Music if you want, but there's also the pre-installed one. It's called Music, and it's got its own tweaks, sound effects, stock ones by the way, genre settings, 5 custom channels, bass boost, surround sound, and a preset reverb, as well as BS loudness available in the settings. So in some conditions, people find this speaker easy to cover when you're holding it like this for gaming, but if you hold it like this and leave room for the speaker, you'll be happy with it. Let's listen to some tunes, draw some conclusions, so here we go. This one. Okay, now let's draw some conclusions. As you can hear, the volume is not exactly mind-blowing, the bass is not impressive. I would call it mid-level volume, okay highs and voice, the back doesn't vibrate, there's no distortion. We have FM radio here, and we also have headphones, which you saw in the unboxing, and they're very similar to the Apple AirPods, which is not bad. It means they're comfy and they don't fall during jogging. Here they are. Very similar to the Apple AirPods, and the remote is quite sexy. And their own experience, well, they're comfy, they have a deep bass, but they feel slightly muffled, and the volume not the highest in the world. Speaking of volume stuff, we got a decibel meter and we're not afraid to use it. So photos here, and here we go, decibel meter test. So first of all, we used an acoustic sample, like a music sample, achieving 84.3 decibels. This is superior to the OnePlus 3 and the iPhone SE, but inferior to the Allview X4 Soul Extreme and the LG AKA. Now the other test was done using multimedia, basically the game from before Riptide. This led us to 91.2 decibels. It beats the Moto G5 and the Huawei P10 Plus, but at the same time scores below the Sony Xperia L1 and the Nokia 3. I would say it's okay acoustics, needs more bass. On the camera front, some parts of the Allview X4 Soul Infinity series, which has 4 phones. Some of the phones have dual cameras, this one only has a single camera. By the way, one important mention: if you buy one of the phones from the X4 Soul Infinity series, you can pay money and have it upgraded. So you take it to the Allview service, you give them some money, something like 20 bucks, and the difference between the N, L, S, M phones, and they put extra RAM, extra CPU, well, replace the CPU and extra storage, and turn your L phone into an N phone or a Z phone. So that's nice to have. You can actually upgrade your phone. Back to the camera. So 16 megapixel shooter, dual LED flash, face detection autofocus, regular autofocus, and that's the back camera. f1.8 aperture and sapphire glass protection for the lens. At the front, 8 megapixel shooter with its very own LED flash, cutely hidden there. Now, as far as the camera app goes, minimalistic, a bit old school, reasonable options. I'd say we got your HDR here, we got your picture-in-picture, which catches the front and the back camera in one single shot, got your slow motion, and the usual settings and options like face beauty, exposure, white balance, zero shutter delay, anti-shake, and by the way, you can only film in full HD, just in case you were wondering. Okay, let's ditch the formalities and go straight to the photos area so I can show you the gallery of shots I've taken. Here we go, camera. So it was a very cloudy day, as it usually happens around November. And here we go. So I will have to say that the camera takes some solid HDRs, although at times it exaggerates with the lighting a bit. These are some selfies. I would have to say that I was pretty curious about the way it takes the selfies. Apparently the background is clearer than my face, which I do not understand. So the face is sometimes blurry and the background is sometimes too clear. Anyways, back to the main shots. When it comes to close-ups, it's very good, but in general it feels like a Facebook camera. So the photos, even the best of them, are only Facebook worthy. You're not going to be posting in a photo enthusiast forum, believe me. I have to say that the colors are calibrated okay, minus the greens, which I'm not a big fan of in this case. There's some blue hue every once in a while, and also the odd blurred shot. Not many of them. I would say it's within the normal limits for a mid-range phone. These selfies are actually a bit better because the area was better lit. Once again, for a mid-range phone, okay, but it's bothering me that the background is more clear than my face. The HDR really highlights, well, the highlights. I know it sounds weird. We took some more macros here. When it comes to the landscape shots, not many details, sadly, and you can see that in the leaves of the trees from the distance. Things are also a bit dark, but this can be excused by the fact it was a very cloudy day. This is the picture-in-picture thing. You can see my face and the shots. These are some colorful objects. Once again, cloudy day. And a nice hue of blue. If the greens aren't great, the reds and the blues are quite okay. Panorama is modest, 48 over 640 pixels, and at some point we zoomed on some seagulls, and that time the zoom was okay. We caught the details in a pretty okay fashion. You can see me zooming here, and not bad details of the gulls, but otherwise not impressed with the details in general. Yes, I took some pretty nifty landscape shots, but in the end, I've seen better on other phones, maybe more famous brands. So overall, I would say that these pictures are quite okay for Facebook, not more than that, and this phone is able to fight the Motorola Moto G5 and the first Huawei P9 Lite, but that's the level it sticks on. It also feels below the Allview X4 Soul style, if you remember that phone. Now, these are the daytime shots. We also took nighttime shots, you can see them here, and one thing is for sure, once you take out the flash, things get totally blue, and also the brightness is the strong suit of the phone for sure. If you take your time and patience to focus, things start to look just slightly better. Things are also very yellow, and if you zoom in you lose some details. Street light halos are okay in size. Once again, a sample of yellowish stuff, not the clearest in the world, so if you look at something in the distance you'll notice some blur, but if you focus properly you may be happy with the results. Some light artifacts here and there. Here we go. You can see them appearing at the top of the image, but I'm liking the clarity of these monuments overall, so for low light capture is reasonable at best, that's what I would say. You can compare it to an older HTC mid-range phone from 2 or 3 years ago, and I would put it on par with the ZT Nubia phones, the mid-range ones. It also feels a bit below the Verni Tor. Now, this is the photo. Let's talk about the video. We're doing Full HD capture, MP4, 30 frames per second and 17 megabits per second, and that's what the video looks like. I would say the focus is okay, there's no major refocusing here, nice exposure change when it comes to that, and pretty okay colors. The acoustics are rather echoey, and in the distance if you try to make out the leaves of the trees, well, you cannot, so it doesn't catch a lot of details. Another shot here, this is where the exposure is put to work, going from the shade to a sunnier area, pretty okay exposure change. And if you try to zoom, you lose a ton of details. If the weather is windy, the microphone will catch some flack, you will not be happy with the results. Things are also a bit dark, I have to mention again, it was a very cloudy day. And also, the image is quite shaky, even when you're not moving around. Of course, the phone does not have any sort of high-end stabilization. Once again, pretty okay colors, maybe except for the greens, and shaky image, not bad clarity, bad details in the distance, but for a mid-range I would say it's reasonable. I would go back to the Asus Zenfone 2 times, maybe the Zenfone 2 Laser, I will put it on par with that, maybe the Huawei Honor 7, maybe some of the Nubias. It's below the Xperias, the mid-range Xperias, and below the mid-range Motorola phones, but it's above the HTC Desire 10 Lifestyle, and also pretty much on par with the LG Q6. Now, let's see some low light videos. Of course, expectations are pretty low, and the results too. So, things are dark, things are also overcome with a blue hue, big street light halos, but somehow the focus is okay, and also the panning wasn't bad. Details are poor, somehow the microphone behaved better at night, less noise probably, and panning is decent. I would say there's too much blue and too many artifacts, but in the end you get what you pay for. It's still a mid-range phone which is quite affordable. And things are also a bit shaky for my taste, not very impressive. The only thing the phone is good for is maybe some selfies if the background is not too clear and your face too blurry, and some Facebook shots. Now on the browser front we got pre-installed Chrome here, and let's load up gsmdom.com. Here we go. So in Chrome we did some benchmarks, and you should know that the results were not very impressive. I'm talking about Velamo and SunSpider. Somehow I expected just a bit more. Okay, now for the input we got this keyboard here, it supports swipe, it is pretty much stock. On the connectivity front, the Allview X4 Soul Infinity N has an USB Type-C port at the bottom. It also has a GPS, FM radio, GLONASS, HD voice, there's an audio jack, in case you're wondering. There's a 4G LTE of the category 6 kind, apparently up to 300 megabits per second downloads. There's Bluetooth 4.0, we got Wi-Fi, BGN, Wi-Fi Direct. This is a dual SIM phone, by the way. We get speed dial, and the calls were very loud and very clear. The microphone was good, in spite of the fact that during filming, not that good. Now when it comes to the speed test, we also did that, and let's see how that came out. So speed test is here, and one of the results is this one here. It involves 4G. On 4G we achieved 24 megabits per second downloads, 33 megabits per second uploads. I've seen higher than that. but we did that in lesser populated area in the town. And when it comes to Wi-Fi, 72 mega per second and 25 mega per second download and upload respectively. This is reasonable, but the ping is kind of high. We are done with the connectivity. Let's talk software. Now on the software front, we're running on Android 7.0 Nougat, which you'll see in a minute now. Here it is, Android 7.0 Nougat, in a pretty much stock affair. This time Allview has decided not to apply each visual UI interface, which has many tweaks. Anyways, for multitasking we get the carousel, and it also should include the ability to drag to split the screen, so you can use photos at the same time while looking for an interesting app in the Play Store. So that's multitasking, carousel and split screen in a nutshell. We got virtual buttons, we don't have capacitive or physical home one. Keep the home screen pressed, you are treated to the wallpapers, widgets and settings. Widgets are those ones, pretty much stock affair. And as far as settings are concerned, well, first of all, if you do the drop down thingy, the swipe down gesture, you can see notifications and quick settings. Once again, pretty much stock, nothing has been changed here. Now in the settings area, we got your connectivity, display, notifications, sound, apps, storage, battery, memory, and smart motion, a series of common gestures, shake to answer and so forth. This is basically the cleaner of the resources. It boosts the features of the phone. And then we got the location, security, emergency rescue, and we also have security, which involves the fingerprint scanner at the back, right here below the camera. So let's put it to the test. Fingerprint, continue, security with a pin, hopefully a better pin than 1, 2, 3, 4. Done. Here we go, and it's the usual setup that involves 12 steps. You know, like the rehab 12-step program. Here we go, fingerprint added. I have to say that while it's pretty accurate, it's not the snappiest in the world, so it requires the pin at first. Don't worry, it only requires it for the first time. Here we go, put the finger here, you're done, put it again, you're done again, but kind of slow. At least it's accurate. So we're still on the software front. Now, when it comes to the pre-installed apps, I counted them all. There's 30 of them, not much bloatware. We got the Bitdefender mobile security. We got Allview Avi, which is their very own voice assistant. It's not a virtual assistant. It doesn't use AI and doesn't use its own services. It resorts to Google, Wikipedia, and so forth. But you can give it commands related to things on the phone. So let's check it out. It's a Romanian assistant. It's actually the first of its kind. It's called Avi, and they made a bit fuss about it because you don't see it every day. So you can go to the settings. Okay, so it's in Romanian right now, and you can go once again to the settings for the interactions. As far as I know, you should be able to set up the language finally. So English. Come on. What's the weather like?
Looking for the weather.
It's taking its time. Here we go. Open camera. That's only 2 examples. If you try to do math like 2 plus 2, it resorts to Google. Let's try. What is 2 plus 2?
Here is what I found.
Okay, so you can see that, and you have a list of the commands here.
Discover how I can help you.
The voice is rather robotic. It's not as evolved as Google Assistant, Amazon Alexa, and so forth, but it also doesn't want to be. It's just the start. It's a vocal assistant, not a virtual assistant. Anyway, stock interface, not many apps, no bloatware, and this Avi, in the future, when it evolves, is going to turn into something interesting, I bet. Now, it's time for the verdict on the pros and cons side. On the pro side, we got some pretty good looks for a phone that's around $400 or even less. It's got a pretty crisp and bright screen. The battery is pretty okay in my book, especially the continuous usage. You're still getting 4 GB of RAM, a pretty okay performance, reasonably good volume, especially in multimedia. It's a comfy phone for this big screen. The facade is certainly beautiful and immersive. The pictures are good enough for Facebook, not more than that. Allview is a nice thing to use, especially if you're Romanian and you actually use it in Romania. It's a compact phone, it's got some nice headphones, truly nice, and a clean UI. Now on the con side, the back side easily scratches, the speaker and headphones have no bass, the video capture was unimpressive, the phone is rather pricey compared to other mid-rangers, and the screen resolution is just 720p, I wanted a bit more. In the end, people will buy this phone maybe out of nationality. It has the Romanian Allview thing. It's also a fully Romanian phone. It doesn't have an equivalent in the Johnny area. It's a Premier, the first 18:9 Allview phone. And it also takes some pretty okay pictures for Facebook, and the looks have got to be the best thing about it. So looks, the fact that it's upgradable if you pay money, not so bad picture taking camera, and Allview to boot. So that's it in a nutshell. This has been the review of the Allview X4 Soul Infinity N. It's an entire series which includes 3 other phones which you can upgrade if you pay extra money. This is it from us, gsnrom.com. Bye bye.